Hi, I'm John Matthews, veteran law enforcement officer and winery owner, and your host for the podcast version of True Crime and Wine. And I'm pleased that you joined us for this unique podcast where we feature the fascinating world of serial killers while we enjoy award-winning wine. So why serial killers and wine? Well, the answer is simple. Since I'm the only winemaker in the world who's captured a serial killer. And no, I didn't use wine. So this is real true crime and real wine. And each episode, myself and Brandy Diamond, the popular podcast host of Texas Wine and True Crime, which you can also hear on Spotify and all of your favorite podcast platforms, well, she'll join me and together we'll take you on a journey profiling some of the world's most interesting and intriguing serial killer cases while enjoying some of our favorite wines. I've got my favorite Casaro wine. Today it's Montepulciano. But we'll talk about that a little later. So pour yourself a glass of killer Cabernet or maybe murderous Merlot and join us for this podcast version of True Crime and Wine. Now, in this episode, we'll take you on a journey profiling one of the most interesting and intriguing serial killer cases in the world. So let's welcome Brandy Diamond to the show. How you doing today, Brandy? And what do you think of this really unique story we're about to unravel?
Hey, John. Great to be back in the studio with you. So a couple of things kind of pop out about this particular case. One, we're talking about a woman serial killer, which is much more rare than a man serial killer.
Yeah, only about 12% of the serial
it's a very
killers
small number.
are female. Yep.
And so I'm also thinking about, we did the eyeball killer, first episode. And I feel like when it comes to serial killers, they all have their thing, right? So she definitely had her thing. And what a wild thing this is. And I can't even imagine what the people, and gosh, we're going back to the early 1900s too with this. So there's a lot to unpack, but what do you think about this case? Being in law enforcement, studying serial killers, what are your first thoughts when you came across this case?
Honestly, this is one of the most unique serial killer cases I've ever seen. Like you said, female, so that's very rare. The victims willingly came to her. She didn't go out. She didn't hunt them down. But also her method of murder and body disposal, I think this is one of the most perfect crimes I've ever seen. And for somebody that spent 40 plus years in law enforcement, there's not very many perfect crimes out here. But if she hadn't been tricked into a confession, I really believe she could have gotten away with this forever.
I agree with you on this one. She definitely hit it well in things, covering up these crimes. So we're gonna tell the listeners about that. But let's start with, who is this woman? Where is she from? What time frame are we looking at?
Well, her name was Leonarda Ciancelli. She was known as the soap maker of Correggio. And we'll get into that unique aspect of the case in just a little minute. But we're talking pre and post World War II Italy, in a very rural, remote section of that country. And she was born of a mother who was raped, and the rapist forced her to have the child. So Leonarda was that child. She was born April 18th, 1893, and she was also the victim of abuse by her mother, because her mother felt, because she was a child of rape, that she was cursed and she would forever be cursed. And Leonarda internalized those thoughts. Her family was very, very impoverished, and we've seen this with several serial killers that we've studied. She tried to commit suicide twice, but failed each time. She was a petty thief and a con artist. And eventually, when she married a much older registry worker, basically an office worker in the government, against the wishes of her parents. So that's the character that we're dealing with today.
Well, you grow up being told you're nothing and treated like you're nothing. And she sort of disposed of these people like they were nothing. So, you learn what you live. And sounds like she had it hard from the very beginning, and people just around her were no help. So, John, I think what makes our show just a little different to this, and thanks for opening with this, profiling where they come from, who they are, what makes them think like this, what makes them actually commit these crimes. I think that's what makes our show just a bit different is your history of this. You can look at the MO, you can look at who they are, where they come from, the victim style, the weapons they use, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to this case?
Well, and people ask me all the time, are these serial killers, are they born to kill? Is it nature or is it nurture? And I always tell people, in my experience, it's the perfect storm. It's the nexus of nature and nurture. And in Leonardo's case, you can see impoverished, abused, kind of tortured by her parents, especially her mother, who said she was a cursed child, that she grew up in a very rough life. The family had no money at all. So what were her survival mechanisms? What were her techniques? And with spree killers, there's a precipitating incident. Something happens, they snap. With mass shooters, same thing. Something happens and it leads them down to a path of mass shootings. But with serial killers, they evolve. And that's why it's so important to look at their MO and to look at the entire picture, the victimology, the geography, everything, because it all comes together. Nature and nurture comes together. And when it's the perfectly wrong combination, that's what creates a serial killer. And I think we're already starting to see it with a very early introduction to her. Why is being a thief and a con man important in this context? Because I think you see that evolution of survival. She was
Absolutely.
impoverished. She was starving. Her family didn't treat her well. And that's how she coped with life, being a criminal and honing her craft as a con artist.
I'm this case is very fascinating for a couple of reasons, but the two things, John, I want to kind of bring up here is food and soap, right? Surviving to eat and stay clean. And I think
Yes.
this is just a natural reaction to our brain mechanism, right? Of survival. And gosh, you think, was it these things as a young child, not having them, and then being able to have them later on, but in a very strange and screwed up manner. But gosh, I just think you're right. The nexus of nature and nurture is just coming full forefront here.
And that's why it's so important when we look at serial killer cases to know their background. Where did they come from? How did they develop? And I could tell you, in 4 decades of doing this, there was a lot of people in really bad positions, poor poverty, just really, really sad living conditions, but they don't turn out to be serial killers. It's got to be that perfect storm of nature. Something wired them a little bit differently, and science is looking to try to figure that out every day, and the conditions they grew up with. So let's kind of talk about Leonardo a little bit. We know as a child, she had a very rough childhood, that even as a young adult, she was arrested on several occasions. She was a thief. She was a con artist. She honed her craft at swindling people out of money so that she could survive. But even when she got married, she had a run of bad luck. She moved with her husband to his hometown and was arrested again, now this time as an adult, for fraud. Again, con artist, and she's defrauding people. That was in 1927. She serves her time, comes back out. In 1930, the entire town is leveled by an earthquake and she's left homeless. She moved to Correggio and settled there, and she thought she would turn her life around by opening a soap shop. Where did the money come from? Well, we really think it was some of those con jobs that she pulled over the years, and she hid the money away. But her bad luck continued. She had 17, Brandy, I can't even imagine this, 17 pregnancies, and only 4 children lived to adulthood.
Oh my
3
gosh.
were miscarriages, 10 others dying of various causes. And no, we don't know what those various causes were. But when we start to see as her life played out, we have a pretty good indication that they weren't all accidents.
Yeah, as a woman looking at this, I do think of I'm a big history person. I've read a lot of history, especially in this kind of era. And, modern medicine isn't what it is today. And there was a lot of loss of life of children. And as a mom, who's been through that, I think to myself, gosh, how did they handle it? And then you see these kind of numbers. But then we also have seen cases, John, where we have these mothers who are continuing to have children, who something mysteriously does happen to the child. So, and we know now what this woman was actually doing with her time. So it's not far-fetched to think maybe, that, like you said, that all of these weren't just natural causes of these kids.
Yeah. The more we look at it, that's what it seems is there's a growing pattern here. And so Leonardo is really distraught, as you might think at this point. She decides, I'm going to go to a palm reader. Now, her mother always told her she was cursed, but she tried not to believe it. She thought it was just a series of misfortunes. So she goes to a palm reader and she tells her, hey, tell me about myself. Am I really cursed? And the palm reader tells her, I don't know you, but I know most of your children are going to die at a young age. And I see in your right hand prison, and I see in your left hand an insane asylum. Upon hearing this assessment of her life and this foreboding prediction, that's when we think Leonardo really progressed into this world of serial killers. And unfortunately for her, the palm reader's predictions, the children, the prison, and the insane asylum would all come true.
I mean, that just gave me goosebumps because how many people want to go to a palm reader but don't, just in case there might be bad news? She gets real bad news, but turns out to be her life, which
Yes.
is mind-blowing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely amazing that before the killing spree starts, that this palm reader predicted exactly what was going to happen with Leonardo. Now, before we get into the first victim here, how about our wine break? Are you ready for a wine break, Brandy?
I could use a wine break.
On each episode of True Crime and Wine, we feature one of our Casaro winery brands, and it's fitting to share with everyone that I'm enjoying today a glass of Montepulciano. This is one of our favorite wines at Casaro. It's kind of a garnet color, beautiful, beautiful with pizza and pasta. This one wine alone has won us 14 international medals. And when folks come into the winery, it's one of our most popular wines. They order it all the time. They sit down, they have a pizza, maybe a charcuterie board, and they say, listen, John, we know the Montepulciano is a huge winner. It's got a great aroma, great flavors to it, and it holds up to some of the best dishes that you can make, whether it's a veal parmesan or any type of pasta or pizza. So today we're celebrating, and I see you've got your True Crime and Wine glass, Brandy, with our Casaro Montepulciano. And as always, you can get those at casarowines.com. Order online. We ship to 43 states. Try the Montepulciano or any of our True Crime branded wines. Salud.
Salud. All right, John, now we've had a wine break, a little sip of wine, because we're going to need it as we get into what she was doing and who her victims are. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about victim number one.
Yeah, victim number one, her name was Faustina Seti, and she was a neighbor of Leonarda, and Faustina was a lonely spinster, and she was seeking a husband. Leonarda went to her and said, hey, I'm a matchmaker. I can find you a husband. Now, we know from her background, Leonarda wasn't a matchmaker. What was she? She was a con artist, right? She knew this spinster was lonely. She knew she had money, and she said, I found you a husband. She even convinced Faustina to write letters to her family saying, hey, I'm safe and I'm with my new husband and I just moved to a neighboring town with him. So not only did Faustina come visit her in her soap shop willingly, but she convinced her to write letters to the family saying, don't worry about me. I'm with my new husband and I'm happy. And Faustina paid Leonarda 30,000 lira for the match. And I kind of did some calculation. And if you calculate that 30,000 lira into today's money, it's over $100,000.
Oh my. Okay, so you
What
have
a
a
con.
woman who's clearly lonely.
Clearly
and
lonely.
willing to do whatever she can to get a husband. Was she convincing her to write these letters to the family before any man was introduced to her?
Yeah, there was no man. She never met a man. But this lady was so convinced, she paid her, she wrote the letters. And then let me tell you what happened. Now, Faustina's ready to go and leave and elope, right? And Leonarda says, come to my soap shop. Come visit with me, and we're going to celebrate your new husband, your new wedding. So she went to Leonarda's soap shop, and Leonarda gave her poisoned wine. She collapsed and died right there in the soap shop. Leonarda then dried her blood and made it into tea cakes. Tea cakes, little pastries that she would later serve in her soap shop.
Okay,
She then...
That,
I mean, this is almost unbelievable, right?
That is, okay,
Leonarda
dried
then
the blood
chops
out,
her
put
body.
it in the tea cakes.
Yeah, but
wild.
that's not it. She then chopped her body into 9 pieces. Why 9 pieces? Well, that's a typical butchering pattern, right? Head, arms, leg, torso. Well, where did Leonarda, what did she use to make soap?
What?
Pigs, right?
Oh.
She used the fat from pigs. So she knew how to butcher animals.
Oh my God. Okay.
So
we know this is victim number one. Are we sure this is victim number one?
This is number one. Yep.
And
Wait
you
till
just
they get
go
to number 3.
This. You just go straight to this. Well, I mean, just wild. Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, how did she know how to cut up like that? Because that is very butcher. We do see that in a lot of cases because it's not easy to cut up a body. It is not. Bone is actually very hard to get through. It is not easy.
Let's picture this. There's a soap shop which is really pretty and really nice. And it's well decorated, and there's lots of things to purchase in there, different soaps and perfume soap. This is a high end shop. And again, where'd the money come from? Years and years of con. It is on the first floor, and she lives with her husband and some of the children on the second floor. In the back of the shop is where she butchers the animals. And so it's all she has to do is move the body from the front to the back. She's already got the tables, the equipment, the knives, the axes, everything. And even more, she already has a body disposal system because she's been using it on the animals to make the fat, to make the soap. Out back, she has a cauldron. I'm not kidding. I've only heard of a cauldron in stories about witches, right? I didn't know they were real. She has a cauldron, and she uses a lye mixture to dissolve the body parts into sludge and then pours them into a community septic tank. No evidence, no clues, no body, no victim. Gone. 100%.
Do you think, besides the way she's raised and the things, the life that she lived growing, right, survival mode, do you think pigs just wasn't enough? Like, do you think she found satisfaction in the cutting, in the disposal, and then wanted to see if she could do it to a human being? That was kind of my first thought when I was thinking about this.
I think it's a little deeper than that. I think it's that she was so mad at growing up so poor, so impoverished, dirty, in the streets, little food, that when she saw these other women who had money and jewelry and homes and families, that she wanted that. And the way to possess that was to possess them.
You're so right about that. So right about that. All right, so we've got crime scene. Okay, so let's talk about, you said, okay, this is victim number one.
Yep.
She's putting this in tea cakes. What is your thought about that? Why is she now using this stuff in the things that she produces that people are purchasing from her? What is the fascination in that?
Well, one, it's free materials, and so she's using the dried blood to make tea cakes. And we're also going to see later that she progresses to using body parts, especially fat, to make the soap sold in her soap shop. So she is totally embodying that victim and then selling it to the other victims. These women are willingly coming into her shop, and they're sitting and they're having a glass of wine and they're smelling these great soaps and candles, and they're eating tea cakes, and they're having a grand old time in this soap shop. So the crime scene is perfect. The victims come to her. She poisons them with wine and moves them into the back where she's already got an entire butcher shop with the pigs. So if anybody walked in there, what are they going to see? Hair, blood, pig parts. You know, there's going to be nothing out of the ordinary.
Wow.
The victimology, it's wealthy women who need something. And we'll learn a little bit about that later.
So let's talk about victim number two, Francesca.
Yeah, Francesca, again, a middle-aged woman who was lonely. So you see this pattern, right? She's seeking out these lonely women. But is she going out and finding them?
No,
they're coming into her store. They're coming into her soap shop. And what is Leonarda doing?
She's profiling
listening.
them, right? Isn't she
Yeah.
listening and profiling them and figuring out who's going to make the best victims? I mean, like you said, she's looking for women, wealthy, have things that she wants. And like you said, need something. I mean, for a woman to pay that much money to get a husband and then to write letters to her family that she's already with that person and she's never actually met them. I mean, there's some psychological stuff there too of like loneliness, right? And
Yeah.
just want and need. And she definitely preyed upon that.
Yeah, and Leonardo is doing that. She's profiling the victims. All these women, they're coming into her shop, they're drinking wine, they're eating tea cakes, and what are they doing mainly? Talking. It's like a modern day beauty shop, right? The women are in there talking about, I'm lonely, I need a husband, I need this, I need that, and she's listening and profiling them. So Francesca comes in, victim number 2, a lonely middle-aged woman. And she said, I really want a job. I really want to go back to work, and I want to be a teacher again. I used to be a teacher, and I really miss that. So Leonardo tells her what? Oh, I found you a job. I know so many people. I found you a job, and you can start immediately, and you can go back to teaching school. And she convinced her, just like the first victim, to write letters to her family saying she's moving. And Francesca did. She paid her 3,000 lira and wrote her family and said, oh my gosh, my friend found me a new job, and I'm moving immediately. On September 5th, 1940, Francesca again meets Leonardo at the soap shop, and they're going to have a celebratory glass of wine. But the wine, of course, is poisoned. She kills her, chops her up into 9 pieces, places her in the cauldron, makes tea cakes with her blood, and dumps the body, the sludge, because that's all that's left, into the community septic system so no one could ever trace it. Because everything from the community, all the garbage, all the trash, everything, all of the feces, the urine, everything is being put into that community septic system. There's no way they could ever trace that a body was there.
You know, I was thinking about, it seems like this is getting really easy for her. And I agree that if it going towards when we get towards the end of this, she may have done this forever. And I'm not sure if she would have actually ever been caught doing this. I mean, you give someone poison in their wine, they drop dead right in front of you, and you quickly do what you need to do and dispose of them. And she's doing this in a storefront. You know, where somebody can come in. I mean, you know, there's just so much to this, John. Like
an upscale storefront. No, this is an amazing, amazing story. Now, do you like profiling along with your favorite podcasts like this one or favorite true crime television show? If you do, I've got a treat for you. We just released a brand new True Crime Profilers notebook. Yes, a notebook that I designed that's filled with pre-formatted prompts so that you can listen to your favorite podcast or watch your favorite television show and profile the crime scene, the victims, the killer, the geography, along with the show's host. Take your own notes. It's now available. The True Crime Profilers Notebook on Amazon.com. Or you can always go to CasaroWines.com, and under our True Crime and Wine section, under merchandise, click right there. It'll take you right to Shopify, and you can get your own True Crime Profilers notebook. Just click on the True Crime section at CasaroWines.com and scroll down to merchandise. And you can profile along with Brandy and I and all of your favorite true crime shows.
All right, John. So we are heading into the thankfully last victim of this serial killer. Her name is Virginia. So tell us about Virginia.
Now, Virginia, she was actually a former soprano in the famous Italian opera La Scala. Famous singer, and she made a lot of money. But she kind of, ran her career and everything and was now out of the opera. So she was talking to Leonardo and said, I would so like to get back into the opera. I would so like to be a singer again. And Leonardo, being the good listener, the really good profiler, and the con artist she was, told Virginia, hey, I don't know if I can get you back into a famous opera, but I happen to know an impresario in Florence, and I know he's looking for a secretary. And I'm sure that if you go in there and he hires you as a secretary, you can start singing. And you can perform, and this impresario is going to love you. That's the way you're going to get back on stage. That's the way you're going to get back into the opera. And Virginia bought it hook, line, and sinker. She gave Leonardo 50,000 lira. Yeah, well over $175,000 and precious jewelry to get back into being an opera singer. And just like the other two victims, she was last seen going into Leonardo's soap shop. It was September 30th, 1940. And she went in there and, of course, drank the wine in her celebration of her new job. Leonardo poisoned her, killed her, chopped her up. She said her flesh was exceptionally creamy, and she made wonderful soap with her flesh. She even added cologne, and she gave it to friends and neighbors and sold it in her shop. And she said that Virginia was so sweet that the tea cakes were the sweetest she had ever made. So now she took this poor woman, she dried her blood and made them into tea cakes, and she took her flesh and made them into soap that she sold in her stores. Absolutely amazing.
Okay. So with Virginia, you have someone who had already seen that success in her
Yep.
life, probably knew how to get back to that success, or at least trying to. And, I'm starting to think this woman had to be very convincing. I mean,
Oh,
she
yeah.
really had to be to get this woman who had already seen this kind of success, who probably knew her path and how to get there, and to believe this, and to believe that she was the way in. I mean, very convincing.
But she wanted it so badly, right, Brandy?
Right.
She had gotten rich.
Desperation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what
It's
she
just wild.
wanted. So let me tell this whole tea cake thing is fascinating. The turning people into tea cakes, and I researched what she did, and as a matter of fact, I even went through the court testimony, and in court at her trial, she turned over to the judge her recipe. But just in general, let me tell you, she drained the blood, she dried the meat in the oven and mixed it with the necessary ingredients to make it tasty and crunchy. And then she sold it in her shop and gave it to friends and even brought it upstairs to her husband, who would eat it with his dinner. And she said she perfected the recipe with each and every victim, and the third victim was the sweetest of all.
John, this is just wild. I mean,
It is.
it is. I mean, do you think she just was completely separated from reality? Like, to me, that is just an out of body to give it to people, to talk about the sweetness of it. It's almost like she doesn't even know what she did.
But no, we see many serial killers that are cannibals, right? And when we don't talk, we talk about the Jeffrey Dahmers, but there are many, about 40%, I think, of serial killers are also cannibals. So it is a way that she controls other people too. Can you imagine the joy and pleasure she gets of feeding her husband or children? Other people, of these rich women, these pretentious women that come into her shop and eat her tea cakes. They're actually eating their friends. They're buying the soap that smells wonderful, and it's actually the soap made from their friends. So it's another way that a serial killer can victimize a large audience, a huge audience. We don't often think about that. We often think about the physical bodies of the victims of who these killers kill. But more often than not, they're thinking about the big picture, the person walking by finding the body, the person that casually, strolls up on the body, not expecting it, and how they're traumatized for the rest of their life. So these killers, they want control over people. And one way to do it is to victimize as many people as possible. So she actually loved not only the killing of it, but actually feeding and selling the victims to other people. I tell you, Brandy, when I do this show in person, we have a whole slideshow we present, and we've got all of the different crime scenes and all that. This is really weird. I don't know why. This may be our true crime lovers. I don't know why. Out of all the shows that we do, right? We're over a dozen shows right now, working our way towards 24. Out of every show I've ever done, the one slide where people get up and take pictures the most, guess what it is?
The tea cakes?
The tea cake recipe. And I'll just tell you what it is. It's dried blood in the oven. It's ground and mixed with flour, sugar, chocolate. That's also a key in this serial killer case here. Why would chocolate be a key?
Well, chocolate's sweet.
It's
so is
sweet?
It supposed to cover up something that she's doing?
A
Tell
little
me.
bit, but to me as an investigator, I look at chocolate. Chocolate in Italy in 1940 is very expensive, very rare. And who can afford it? Only the richest people. And Leonardo, being the con woman she is, not only does she put chocolate in the tea cakes, but remember how I told you she had fragrances for her soap? She can afford to buy the best fragrances and make the best soap. So it's flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, eggs, and a bit of margarine. You knead it together and bake it. So, I don't know if you want to, but after the show today, if you want to make some tea cakes for your husband, there's a recipe. Probably leave out the dried blood, but there's a recipe for you, Brandy.
And I'm going to look at tea cakes a little differently my next time in London on my Sunday tea, just so you know that. Okay. And then the soaps, people bought the soaps, people ate the tea cakes. I mean, John, I think about like a woman who came from nothing and they have this beautiful store now. And like you said, but what paid for that store? The cons. And it was a life that she could never leave. But look, she had felt some sort of success, but I don't even know if that was really important to her. I don't know. Like, you think that there are people who come from nothing, they build something, they're so proud of it, but yet she had some animosity there.
How are you proud of murder?
But it didn't start that way, right? It didn't start that way. She was making soap. She was trying to make a living, trying to live the right way. But then something, like you said, just clicks. Right?
That animosity, that hate of the upper class, the richer women, the women that had families and monies and career, that she knew she would never really have, right?
Yeah.
Because everything she did was built on her crimes, was built on her illegal gains, was built on her hurting people, conning people, tricking people, and eventually killing and eating people. let's talk about her arrest, because really her downfall started, as I said earlier, a witness saw Virginia entering her shop. And Virginia's sister-in-law became suspicious. And because the family was very wealthy, they were able to go to the police and say, we need an investigation. And the police, who might have said, she's gone, she left, maybe she's traveling, she had money, she's free to do what she wants. But the family forced an investigation, and the police said, all right, we'll go check it out. And so the police went to the soap shop, but what do they see? Really, Leonarda, a middle-aged woman who's not very imposing. They don't think anything at all about her. They've got no witnesses. They've got no suspects. They've got absolutely no evidence. But as they're talking to her, they notice her 30-year-old son is there, and he's still living with the family. So a creative police officer says, we've got a missing woman of wealth. Leonarda, we don't think you had anything to do with it. You have this wonderful soap shop and these wonderful tea cakes and wine, but you have an unmarried 30-year-old son. So we're going to arrest him. No evidence, but they told her, we're arresting him for Virginia's disappearance.
Smart. That's clever and smart.
Yep. And Leonarda, who, remember, only 4 of 17 children lived,
Right.
and her son was the oldest. I don't know favorite, but the firstborn living son. And she couldn't take it. She wouldn't let him be arrested. And she told the authorities, I confess. And she confessed to everything. Unbelievably. With no evidence, there's no way they could have ever arrested her, convicted her, anything. They literally probably couldn't have held the son any legitimate time, but she couldn't take the thought of her son going to prison. And she confessed to everything and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. And during the trial, even told the judge what she did, how she did it, how she made the soaps, and how she made the tea cakes.
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
When she's in the trial, when the judge is talking to her, what is her demeanor? You said you were reading through some of the transcripts and some of the things she was saying. What did she have any kind of guilt? Like we talk about this with serial killers. Is there any guilt? Is there more satisfaction? Is it just because her son was being arrested and that's probably the only reason she came forward? I do believe this woman would have kept doing this. For forever if she could have gotten away with it. But what did you take from her demeanor based on those transcripts?
I thought it was a total lack of empathy, just like we see in all of these other serial killers. She didn't care about the victims. She didn't care about the people she hurt. She didn't care about the people that she fed, human bodies to. She felt that she deserved having what these other women had, and she never had in her whole life. Remember, from the earliest days of her childhood, her mother told her she was cursed. She was a devil, that she was nothing. And so she grew up like that. And so she felt that anything that she did was perfectly justified.
Well, that is a strange case. This is fascinating. I had not heard about this case before you brought it to me. I know the listeners are probably sitting there going, what? How? Why? Because again, you have a female doing this and very, very unusual. And this woman looks like a total normal person. I mean, she's sitting there with her legs crossed, her arms crossed in court. I mean, I can see how the police went in and could not think that this woman would be capable of doing something like this.
Yep. And let's for a minute go back to that palm reader. Remember, what were the 3 things the palm reader predicted? Most of your children would die and die at a very young age. Did it come true? Yep.
Sure did.
Yeah. Out of the 17, only 4 lived to adulthood. That she would go to prison. That came true. She spent 30 years in prison for these murders. And right before she died, she was transferred from prison to an asylum for the criminally insane. So in her right hand was prison, in her left hand was the insane asylum. Unbelievably, everything the palm reader predicted years before came true. That absolutely amazing case. And Brandy, let me just tell you, the next time that you're in Rome, you can actually go. There's a museum in Rome, and you can see, I'm not kidding, they have a display of the soap maker of Correggio. They have her cauldron, her axes, her knives, all the tools that she used in these horrific crimes.
Oh my gosh. You did not tell me. Was that my surprise for today? Now I know we have a lot of listeners who actually travel through Europe. In fact, I have a friend there now. So that is absolutely wild. They kept this. Is it because it's so fascinating? I mean, you don't typically see this out on display when we talk about these kinds of crimes, but this is early 1900s. I mean, was it just a fascination of this?
Well, and I still think it's an amazing crime. Like I said, to me, this was almost the perfect crime. And if she wasn't tricked into confessing, I literally think she would have gotten away with it for years because the women willingly came there. She killed him when she was alone. She poisoned him. She immediately took him, chopped him up, disposed of the bodies completely. And you're talking about 1940. There wasn't evidence collection teams and DNA and forensics and everything like we see today. Everything was washed down a common community septic system. I think she would have gotten away with it forever. And that's why I chose this as one of our true crime and wines. A Cup of Murder, and I think it is a very unique and interesting story.
No doubt about it. Our listeners are really going to have to, after they're done listening to this, they're going to have to go watch something happy, or they're going to have to think of themselves, how does this happen? But, like you said, something just triggers and flips, and it's not the first time we've seen it. So, John, great investigating on this one. Great reading the transcripts and really kind of bringing this, because I am willing to bet a lot of people have never heard of this case.
As we put a cork in this edition of True Crime and Wine podcast, I want to thank, of course, my co-host Brandy Diamond for joining me on this journey, and our producer Lauren Bedsole back in the Corsicana Command Center for helping to make this show possible. And we'll see you in the next episode when we present Married Murderers, a crime that features quite a few anomalies among serial killers. First, it's a pair of killers, which is rare, but even stranger, they're married and they enjoy torture and killing together. So we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of True Crime and Wine, Married Murderers. I'm John Matthews. Thanks for joining us today for True Crime and Wine, and salute.
Cheers.